back with deep images. And before I get started on what we're going to talk about tonight, I want to just talk about a couple of things about the channel. First of all, we have 444 subscribers as of today. So whenever we get a magic number, that's a good occasion to say something. And what I want to say is we desperately need 56 more so we can have 500 so that we can begin the process toward monetization. It won't begin our monetization, but it will give us the bare minimum needed. Like if you're under 500, to anyone watching this who has a small channel, smaller than ours, I don't know if that's possible, but if you would do, if you're under 500 subscribers, you basically don't exist on YouTube. Good thing is you can be controversial like us and say very touchy things about our world and politics and get away with it because YouTube's algorithms don't pick us up yet. Now, when we get over 500, we're still going to be outspoken, but we'll just be doing it in maybe a little different way.
Yeah, that's when the Patreon comes in.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly.
I don't know if you can get me to shut up. I have a master's degree now.
So tonight,
wow, look at how she slipped that right in.
I know.
No,
It's all good. I am counting, I am counting the times you do it though. I'm finding you over 5. So Kaylin Ireland's here, co-producer, and our panelists are Bill Mulligan and CF Roberts, and we're expecting a guest panelist named Briggy Williams. She is a female African-American artist, and I really wanted that perspective on, not necessarily female, but that's all the better, but definitely wanted someone more melanated than me to talk about what we're going to talk about, which is Black cinema. And when I say Black cinema, again, it's like Italian cinema or Japanese cinema. It's not a monolithic thing. We're not trying to represent every genre in one session. We're not trying to speak out for anybody, or whatever. But, because it could be, we are doing Black people from anywhere in the world. So they can be African, African-American, Caribbean, Haitian, the global South. And like I was telling them before the show, if that Moore character in Flavia the Heretic had been actually played by a Black actor, I do that. And I actually found out there is a documentary for y'all called Black Exploitalian that tells about the careers of the very few Black crew and cast people in that era of Italian genre cinema.
Interesting.
So I haven't had a chance to watch it, but anyway. So there's no agenda. We're not like going to be like, some kind of super political thing. But I do want to say, if I had an agenda, it would be just to keep in mind that not necessarily every single work we're going to talk about today, but probably 99% of them, at some point has its roots in the systematic oppression of Black people via imperialists and colonizers for several centuries now. And it doesn't look like it's stopping. I could give examples of what happened in Libya under our last couple of presidents ago. I could talk about what's happening in Haiti now, but like I said, I don't have in that agenda today, but it's still with us, sadly. But that informs the indigenous art of Black people, whatever the art form is, even cinema, especially if someone is an auteur and the Black person actually directs and writes it, and sometimes stars in it, sometimes edits it, but yeah, I was telling them that, of the United States of America and the history of that country, this country that I'm living in, this civilization, every indigenous music form ultimately was created by Black people. And if someone wants to argue, I don't want to hear it. So, and I'm not going to list the genres because y'all know all of them because we all listened to it one time or another. I'm not talking about classical music or folk music either. But
you mean even rock and roll? I am being
I mean rock
right now.
Oh, absolutely rock.
Heavy dripping sarcasm. Yes, it was created
rock,
by Black
metal
people in this country.
Yeah, Briggy said metal second. That was the second.
Yeah.
But here's the deal. So we're not going to be super political, but as usual, if it's appropriate to the movie, we'll mention something in context. So let's go ahead and start. We're going to do our usual roundtable, and we're going to go one person at a time. I think I have the list of people. I hope I have the list of people. If I don't, I hope someone else has the list of people.
I do. Those actually at first.
I can wing it if I.
Really?
Yes.
Okay.
It's
Okay.
in my mind.
Oh, no.
You tell me if
I have it
I'm good.
sticky note right here on my desk.
Okay,
Always.
y'all tell me if I get it wrong. I'll try to do it
All
from
right.
memory. So the first person who's going to talk tonight is Bill Mulligan, and we're going to talk, of course, as usual, about one film at a time, go around and then start over again. And our Justin Cotton, one of our favorites, will be here later also to join us.
Cool. I'm going to start with one that I sort of added as an afterthought because I had only seen it once and I wasn't terribly impressed. But I'm glad I picked it because watching it again, I like it a whole lot better than I remember. Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde. Okay, get the giggles out of the way. This is from the same director of Blackula, which has one of the silliest titles ever made, and yet is a kick-ass movie. It's a great movie. It's a good vampire movie, not just a good black vampire movie, just a good, if you have to make a list of some of the best vampire movies of the 70s, Blackula really needs to be on that list. Well,
you know what?
Works.
We did a whole series on this channel. It's on a playlist. Go check it out. It's Deep Images, Vampires. And if I'm correct, the very first movie that we talked about was Blackula by Keith Howell, and me and Bill threw in a bunch of bone mulling.
It's a good one to do because a lot of modern people, the movie's now 50 years old or something, just see the title and think it's a parody. It's one of those joke movies that stupid. And no, it's legit. It's always fun to me to see new people into film given something that maybe just hasn't hit their radar yet and that they will enjoy. Now, the problem with Blackula, it was a huge hit. And everybody then started making, oh, well, if Blackula was good, well, how good would Blackenstein be? And the answer is not at all. What a piece of shit. I mean, there is nothing good to be said about it.
I do have to say someone is going to be covering that on our next part.
And maybe they'll like it. God
I don't
bless
know
them if they do.
It's memorable. So we're going to do it. I'm not saying it's good, bad.
Yeah,
whatever.
It was just,
you don't forget it exists.
It started to be a joke. Like, what else could they do?
Right.
Black the Ripper may or may not have been made. Probably wasn't.
I have it on Blu-ray. Full disclosure.
Oh, really?
I only paid $3 for it, but I have it. Yeah.
Wow.
I'm a blaxploitation maniac.
They stopped.
I'm a collector.
They stopped before they got to the Hunchback of Notre Dame, but that was definitely on the list.
It
would have happened if they could have.
What about that other one that you said doesn't exist or might exist? The Ripper.
Dead End. Yeah, I'm almost 100% convinced that's a hoax.
Okay, Black the Ripper it was originally called, or something crazy like that.
Whatever.
Okay.
This
Urban Legends.
Tell you the truth, Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde is kind of a Jack the Ripper sort of thing. And right off the bat, there is no Dr. Black in this movie. Or Mr. Hyde. They just, it's a gag title. It was going to be called The Watts Monster or something, which is not a great title either. Actually, Dr. Black and Mr. Hyde is better. And the premise of the film is that Bernie Casey, and I just want to stop here and say, I love Bernie Casey. And this is one of the things for those 70s blaxploitation movies. It's very different now when you see the main black actors and everything. The sort of celebrity black actors that we have now are rap stars. The ones we had back then were athletes. Yeah. Bernie Casey looks physically imposing, and I'm sure he did to the many men who he ran over in the NFL. The last thing they saw were his cleats coming down their face. He's got that gravitas because if you met him in person, you'd be like, yes sir, yes sir, yes sir, looking up at him and everything. And that was the thing back then. This was black actors before that had been Stepin Fetch, Maitland Moreland. And I don't want to take away anything from them because I think those guys have gotten a bad rap in history. They were phenomenal artists. But the roles that they were playing were terrible roles. They did the best they could, and that's all that was offered. And they did a good job. And I think I really do think, although it's not a hill I'm going to die on, that if you look at some of the scenes with these minstrel type characters, they may not be as dumb as they are. I wonder if audiences at the time got that maybe these guys were acting dumb to pull one over on the man, because there's an element to that, but I don't know. Who knows? Anyway, Bernie Casey wasn't stepping or fetching for anyone. He's a doctor, Dr. Henry Pride. Should have been Dr. Black and Mr. Pride, really. He's a very wealthy, accomplished doctor. And but like everyone in these movies, because his mom died of cancer that she didn't get treated because she worked in a whorehouse, not as a whore, as a cleaner. It is just, and he's got that in his mind. That's sort of the thing that's been driving him. He wants to cure cancer, and he's not too fond of prostitutes.
Got the social consciousness already. Man.
Right. And so he's trying to cure cancer, and he comes up with a thing, and he tests it on animals and it fails. And then he tests it on a person and it fails. And this guy is portrayed as a very intelligent, accomplished man, but for some reason, after several failures, he decides to test it on himself. And the movies can see is that he turns into a monstrous white guy. Now, the problem with this movie, there's a few. Although I really liked it watching it. It's beautifully shot. It's got absolutely, it's really well done. And the cinematographer, hold on, let me get the name here. Where did it go? Well, Tak Fujimoto.
Oh, he's awesome.
Yeah. I mean, this guy, he is a favorite of Jonathan Demme, M. Night Shyamalan, Terrence Malick. I mean, come on, these are not people who are gonna take anyone who's not good. He's done some phenomenal work, and this is a low budget effort, but it looks sharp. It looks way better than I remembered it. Probably the original one I saw was a bad dude. So okay, the problem is, he looks like, when he turns into a white monster, he looks like Bernie Casey was given a plate of flour and sneezed into it.
Ooh.
It doesn't look good.
He's an albino.
He doesn't even look, albino would have been scary. And I was like, boy, the makeup person here is going nowhere. Well, no, it turns out it was Stan Winston, and there's no one better. So I don't know what went wrong.
I think his eyes look the best. That's in my opinion.
Yeah, the eyes look good. The eyes look good, but he doesn't even look as good as the albinos in the Omega Man.
No, he has to do a Frederick March and really just carry it with the acting, or Spencer Tracy. Sorry.
And this would not be a problem with me, because who am I to say what he's going to look like when he tries his crazy ass serum? The problem is that in the movie, everyone acts like he is a white guy when he shows up. When he comes walking down the street, and there's a bunch of guys who probably have better things to do with their time, and they decide they're going to hassle Whitey here. And you know what? Even if you thought he was a white guy, he's in Bernie frickin' Casey's body. You know how this is going to end. Right. He didn't really need to be a Hulk. He was super strong, but he didn't need to be. He could just be Bernie Casey with bad makeup, and he could still kick their asses, which he does. So that kind of ruins the movie a little bit for me. It's kind of like watching Kung Fu, where every time David Carradine walked into a bar, people would be like, hey, who let that Chinese guy in here? And I'm like, who, where? Behind David Carradine? He doesn't look at all Chinese, not even remotely. He's not even doing the, he's not even squinting or doing what, white people do to pretend to be Chinese. He's David Carradine. He doesn't look at all. Anyway, but for some reason, they all know his backstory that he's half Chinese. Sure, whatever. That being said, it's a fun movie. It's really pretty good. Although it is a little confusing. Like, are we supposed to root for him? Are we not supposed to root for him? I mean, he's obviously the bad guy when he's Mr. Hyde, because he's going around killing prostitutes. So his inner dislike. I mean, when he's Dr. Pride, he's actually nice to the prostitutes and everything. He's serving, he's treating people in the community and everything. He's got this thing in the back of his head, but it's never going to come out. Okay, well then he takes a serum and out it comes. If you are a student who has to write an essay about films for some artsy fartsy university class or whatever, and you got to kind of make up stuff. You can't just say, well, they made this comedy because they thought people would laugh at the jokes. No, there's got to be some inner meaning. I don't think you could do much better than this one. This movie is open for a lot of interpretation.
Absolutely.
You really, really could have some fun with this. Now, whether any of those interpretations ever crossed the mind of the people who made it, I do not know. I don't know if William Crane, who directed this, and Blackula is still with us. I fear he probably isn't. But this movie had potential to be more than it is, but it's still pretty good. Right. And you know what? It's also got Rosalind Cash from the Omega Man, who was awesome in that. She's awesome in this. Should have done a whole lot more. It's got all the tropes of a classic 70s blaxploitation, though, groovy, funky music that doesn't really fit in the action. It's very much, if you liked Blackula, I think you'll like this movie because he kind of fights like Blackula. He picks people up
the
and
action
throws
scenes
them.
are pretty good.
Yeah, and they're not bad at all. And you've got a great performance in the lead. It ends. People have compared it to King Kong, which I think is an unfortunate comparison. But yeah, I know. But
tell people what he does. Yeah,
he climbs the Watts Tower, grabbing with a woman, and then the cops shoot him down.
Helicopter was super topical then.
It was, but still seems an unfortunate analogy.
Oh, it is unfortunate.
Yeah,
but you know what? People look at this through their eyes. I mean, this was directed by a black director.
Was he black?
William? Oh
no, he was white. I'm pretty sure.
No. William Crane was one of the first black filmmakers.
Oh, he was black. Well,
yeah,
that's one that fell under my radar. Thank you.
Yeah, he didn't do much considering. I think this movie made money, and definitely Blackula made a fortune.
Thanks, man. I didn't know that. That's awesome.
I think he would have made more. The writer only did a few things too, mostly exploitation stuff. But this is a neat little film that's kind of slipped through the radar, and it's very much of its time, as all of these films are. You would not make a movie about a heroic pimp these days. That being said, I think you got to watch it with that in mind. If you want to sit there with pursed lips and just, okay, yeah, but it doesn't matter. The movie's out. You can enjoy it for what it is. You can not enjoy it for what it is. It's up to you entirely. But I want to just say this movie has risen in my estimation. It was much better than I remembered it, or I saw a much better print than I was offered the last time.
I have the DVD. The remaster was great.
Really?
Yeah.
Oh, well, I mean, anything cinematography by Tak Fujimoto is not going to be shoddy.
Right. It's
not going to be shabby. It may be low budget. He, had to cut a few corners. Looks good. It's in focus. It's well composed. And that sounds like I'm not asking for much, but it's more than a lot of films can deliver. So there you go. What year was this?
70. I want to say 3, but I might be wrong.
76. That's kind of late.
Oh, it's late in the cycle. Okay.
It is. It's probably one of the last ones.
Yeah. Okay. Are you cool,
Yep,
Bill?
I'm done. I'm fine.
All right. Yeah. So I had Kaylin down for next. Am I correct?
Yep.
Okay.
All right. So I'm actually going to change my order a little bit here because following up with Bill's pick just now, I want to talk about a short film from 2018 called Werewolf. Yes, that is a pun on werewolf. No, it is not about werewolves at all, but it is, the best way I can describe it is a really, really good satire horror kind of film that is very much like in the style and parodying like really, really classic monster horror movies. It was absolutely delightful. This thing's only like 12 minutes long, but it packs so much into those 12 minutes. It was immensely entertaining. So this one's directed by Mariama Diallo. So it starts off with this intro that is very, very tropey, very like you feel like you're watching like a 70s or 80s horror movie. One of the protagonists is a young Black woman who's in a store, and just you're following her. You see that she drops a product that she's holding on to. She screams, and then the title flashes on the screen in like this wonderful like bright pink text. It's great. And then it cuts to a hair salon where several other people are. And she goes in and she's like, guys, there's something fucking strange in the neighborhood. And like, that's how the whole entire film is, just like all of these very funny nods to like genre stuff. And it's amazing. So she starts telling the story of what happened. And as it turns out, she was in this store, and a white girl who looks about as porcelain as I do, with very, very dark hair, like, this immense contrast and like this blank stare. She's just like no expression on her face whatsoever, comes in and she starts asking this young woman for like basically advice on products and stuff, and she's like, will this like make my ends lay? And she's just like, what? And she's explaining all of this to her friends, and they're just like, wow, that's really weird and really messed up. And then the girl shows up at the salon, same one, And she comes up to the window, you know, looking all vacant and stuff, basically like a zombie, and goes, braids, like hair braids. So she's coming into this black salon, basically asking to get her hair done, and is very, very weird about it. Oh, also during the story, she apparently was admiring the black woman's hair, which was done up in these kind of like twin afro bun things with like a braid in the front. Very pretty, very unique hairstyle. Loved it a lot. And then she just reaches out and touches it and grabs and apparently tears some of her hair out. So it's this whole like, you know, commentary on the invasiveness of like feeling entitled to touching black women's hair, which is this whole entire thing. It was a very big issue. So this girl comes into the salon, and the stylist who's gonna work with her is basically like, okay, well, I mean, if she wants to come in here and do business with me, I'm gonna make her pay like a lot of money for it. So she's like, all right, yeah, I can do your hair for $250. And the girl's like, okay, and just kind of goes in and is like, all right, we'll do this. And she starts kind of just insulting everybody basically and saying a bunch of really ignorant stuff. And then the stylist takes her to a back room to wax her mustache because she's just like, hey, we really need to fix this. It looks really bad. Basically just kind of insulting this girl because she's being very rude. And when they come back from the back room, the stylist suddenly has this like super, super straight, like perm looking, like blonde hair. Like obviously it's a wig. Very, very different from her hair a moment ago. But she's just acting kind of like the white girl, just very like, you know, hair flippy, just playing with it and touching it and stuff, very glamorous, just not her personality at all, just acting very, very weird. All of the stuff continues. There's just a whole bunch of like weird things with the white girl, just kind of appropriating like things that Black people say, talking about like hairstyles and everything. She does that whole gross like, I'm so tan, I'm almost as black as you comment. It's just like, ugh, the cringe is immense. Immense. And she apparently takes over this guy who is in the salon getting his hair done. His name's Damon, and she calls him Bay. And the girl that he, I guess, was dating, it wasn't super explicit, but she's basically just like, what's going on with us? Why are you going with her all of a sudden? Whatever happened to like, you know, Malcolm X and like Black Pride and Black Lives Matter and all that? And then the girl and this guy Damon both look at her and say, all lives matter. And it's just like, oh my God. So then there's a second white girl zombie monster who shows up. She has her hair like up in like Bantu knots and just all of this. And then ultimately the friend whose boyfriend just kind of runs away ends up starting to also kind of transform into one of these like been taken over by the white girl zombies. And basically her friend saves her by doing a bunch of affirmations like back and forth and like talking about Black power being real, loving yourself. They mention like Black women that they admire and stuff like that, and that gets her back. So it's kind of this really interesting situation where you have these two young women who are dealing with this, and it's about gentrification, it's about cultural appropriation. It's set in Brooklyn, which is an actively very, very, very gentrifying borough in New York City. Then there's a white guy at the end too, who instead of braids, he says fade, and it's like he wants his hair done too, and it's like, it's very funny. It is a very just hilarious satirical thing here. And for me, like the experience of watching this film is really interesting because one of my two best friends is a Black woman. I've always had a lot of Black friends, and I've had to learn this stuff over time. You know, I didn't like come into this world knowing how to correctly interact. I'm sure I still make mistakes, but seeing just the over the top cringe stuff that some white people do when they try to interact with their Black friends or even strangers in this case, these girls don't even know any of these people. It's when you know how cringe these things are, you watch it and you're like, I see what you're doing here with this wonderful piece of satire. This is excellent. And watching it, it's like I get the sense that it's like this was not made for white audiences per se, but I can appreciate it. So I really love satire like that. And that's something that happens a lot with people of color working in genres in general. And this is something that's come up in my research actually, is that they just kind of take the genre conventions, they just kind of like twist them and like put their own spin on them in ways that more dominant voices in these genres don't. So this was a really fun example of a horror short that was also very satirical at the same time. It has that horror comedy feel to it, but with this very specific like cultural commentary. So I really enjoyed it a lot. Hairwolf, again, 2018 film. I think I found this one actually on YouTube, if I remember correctly. There was one that I watched that was on YouTube, and there's one that I watched that was on Daily Motion, I think is where I tracked it down. So these are out there on the internet that you can watch for free, which is great. I really want more people to see them.
Very cool. Very cool. And what nationality was that film? I think you was that.
Oh, did I write that down? I might not have written that down.
We're doing some non-American films, so if anybody
We are. I want to say that this director is American. Give me one quick second.
I think it's a pseudonym for William Crane, and he's really alive. My theory.
Also, now that I'm looking her up again, I actually can't read my own handwriting. It's Mariama, not Mariana. It's with an M. So my apologies about that. Okay, she is American and Senegalese.
Ah, that's interesting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Apparently she was born in Guinea, so kind of a multinational heritage here, which is cool. And again, I really need to look up more details and actually remember them, but that is from a quick Google search. I'm sorry, I wrote this down for the other short film that I watched, but not this one, and I'm just like,
how many minutes is this film?
This one's about 12. Like it's really short.
Oh, really?
But all that in 12 minutes, and wow. It's very quick. The pacing is very quick. It's just very like the pacing is good. The comedy is good. The story is just there. It's clear. It's a concept. It's really funny.
I'll go ahead and plug this place, even though I'm going to drop them because they charge too much for subscriptions, and I'm going through a lot. But Mubi is probably it is probably on Mubi. If it's not active where you can watch it, it's probably under one of their essay things, and it will one day be, because in the last few months that I kind of almost quasi accidentally subscribed and then regretted it because it was another negative in my bank account. They have added a ton of short films and short animated films from all over the world. I mean, and so when he says 12 minutes, I was like, wow, that sounds like something I saw on Mubi recently.
Yeah. Nice. I really want to check that service out too, because when I was doing research for this, I found a lot of films that were popping up on there, but it's worth the money. Currently broke, cannot add another subscription service.
It's worth the
right
money
now,
if you watch it a lot.
Yeah.
But I don't. I forget it a lot of times. I'll bookmark like 20 things, and then I'll go on the other platforms for a few days. And
I still need to use my Shudder account more. Like I've been subscribed to Shudder since like December, I think, and I still have only watched like 2 or 3 movies on it. I'm really bad about that.
We have to get a sharing network going. I have one with some people who belong to this podcast, none of y'all, and with someone who used to belong to it. So I do have access to some of them, but not Mubi. I got to find somebody who can give me their Mubi login. If anybody wants to give me their Mubi login, you get my email.
Friend of the show status.
Exactly. Patron
status. Yes.
So since our other 2 panelists have not arrived yet, we're going to leap, and I think the next order after that would be Chuck, Mr. C.F. Roberts.
Okay, dokie. Well, my first movie is from 1976, and it is The Human Tornado with Rudy Ray Moore. And
oh yeah,
a film that, in all honesty, I actually like. It's the sequel to Dolomite. It's actually, I go as far as tell you I like it better than Dolomite.
I do too.
I think the pace is much better. I think Rudy had a big success with Dolomite, and they just turn him up to 11, and they turn the ridiculousness up to 11.
If I could butt in for 2 seconds, this is just my theory. Tell me if you agree with it, CF. I think it's because they out of desperation got D'Urville Martin, the actor, to direct the first one, and it was pretty slack. But Cliff Rockamore, who was also an actor who played the cop in the first one, he directed the next few Rudy Ray Moores, and the quality went way up.
Yeah, that might have a lot to do with it. But yeah, it's just a lot of fun. Toward the beginning, you just see him in the opening credits coming out wearing this variety of outrageous clothes and just with these big splashy graphics and doing all these karate moves and all this crazy
American
stuff.
classic.
So it's like they've just gone mad with Dolomite, just going, four to the floor. But plot wise, it kind of starts out with him he's just coming off a tour doing his spoken word comedy thing, and he apparently lives in this big mansion up on a hill, and in some unspecified southern town, and he's having this big shindig. In the back room at the shindig, he's banging this white woman who's evidently paying for his services, and
of course,
yeah,
they get news. They get news that there's this party happening at this mansion where there are all these black people, which is a big no-no in this town. And so,
no, not black people.
Yeah, and so the the stereotypical redneck sheriff and his deputy and their men decide they have to run up and bust that up. And so they go to this mansion, they start kicking everybody out, arresting everybody, just pulling a big dragnet kind of thing. And they finally make it to the back room where Dolomite is with this woman, only to find out it's the sheriff's wife. And as soon as she sees him, she's just crying rape. And Dolomite sits up and he's just like, "Bitch, are you for real?"
That's one of the best lines in the movie.
Yes. Which among me and my friend group became just a huge catchphrase.
Yeah,
we'd say it, just the folks who turned me on to Rudy Ray Moore and Dolomite, and we'd all hang out and watch that. Just, "Bitch, are you for," and that would come up every now and again. Just, "Bitch, are you for real?" as a retort. And the deputy shoots her, and they pin the murder on Dolomite. Dolomite takes off, runs down the hill, goes rolling down the hill. And this is how over the top this movie is. It freezes. The film freezes right in the middle of it. And you hear him on a voiceover saying, "Y'all don't think that's for real? Watch this cool shit." It winds back and you get to see him jump again.
And he's totally naked, by the way.
And he's totally naked. And so he and a couple of his friends hitchhike out to California, where his friend Queen Bee is having her club busted up, and a couple of her girls have been kidnapped by the villain, who's a mob guy named Cavaletti. And the rest of the movie is basically him trying to rescue these girls from Cavaletti and the mob, and get Queen Bee back her club and whatnot. And I think at one point there's this insane, surreal scene where he ends up finding out where the girls are being held by sneaking into Cavaletti's house and banging his wife. And the thing falls into this weird fantasy realm where she's lying on top of a bunch of giant building blocks and all these toys in the house, and she indulges in the fantasy of having sex with Dolomite. And he's and eventually he brings her, I guess, to such ecstasy the ceiling of the house is falling in, and she just keeps repeating where he's got them in the house on the hill. He's got them in the house on the hill. As the whole house seems to fall in on itself. And so they go out and pull this big commando raid on the house on the hill, and kick people's ass, and are, I think, either beating people down or killing them. They got karate guys in there pulling karate moves, and I think one of the main girls who works for Queen Bee attacks Mrs. Cavaletti and scratches her face off, or it's like scratches her face. And finally, they liberate everybody, and that's when the redneck sheriff reappears.
Oh boy.
Trying to pin this, his wife's murder on Dolomite again. And in the end, he chases him down to Cavaletti's abode or whatever it is, and Dolomite is just getting done dispensing with Cavaletti, and then the sheriff comes running around the corner and guns him down, and he drives off. And just when you think that gloating, and then just when you think that's the end, Dolomite gets up and rips open his shirt, and he's got a bulletproof vest, and you just hear him say, "That stupid sheriff thinks he killed me." End credits.
And any further analysis of that one?
I don't know what further analysis I could give it.
Well, you did say that you and your buddies got into Dolomite a while back, and it was kind of a thing, and I had a similar kind of experience. A slightly smaller group, probably maybe 3 of us. But
yeah,
we were quoting that movie constantly, and
this was 4 or 5 of us. But
yeah, that's like party level. There you go.
Yeah, and it's just.
When did you first see one of his movies? I'm curious.
It would have had to have been late 90s.
Okay, so after me, I'm kind of surprised.
Yeah,
no. The reason I say that is where I live in Charlotte, there was no Rudy Ray Moore material in the 1990s until this one big video store opened in like 1999, 8. So I was actually visiting a friend in Winston-Salem, and I saw Dolomite on the shelf. I'm like, I'm renting this. And these are former friends, by the way. And of course, they regaled me with mockery because it was just so low brow and low budget and low consciousness. But fuck them, I loved it. I love Rudy Ray Moore more than those people. And I finally found Human Tornado at another one in Charlotte, but it took another couple of years before that they started carrying it. So are you in Arkansas?
Yeah. Yeah, which of course, 40 minutes from here is Fort Smith, which is where Rudy Ray Moore was born.
Oh wow!
And there are moves, there are petitions out there. They have been floating around to get a statue put up of him.
Oh yeah.
But
it's great.
I don't know if it's ever going to happen.
No, I didn't know him, but I did talk to him on the phone twice and interview him. And these interviews never got published. And the funny thing is, I talked to him for an hour the first time, and I recorded on my answering machine on one of those little tiny mini cassettes. And he told me a lot of stuff that confirmed a lot of rumors and stuff about him and where he got his material. And then a year later, I was writing for another magazine, which I thought, well, they'll definitely publish this, and they were going to, but me and the magazine parted ways before we got to that article. Like I was doing one feature article in the issue. I did one on Kimba the White Lion. I did one on Viennese actionism. These are out there if y'all want to find them. iMagazine, and out of print, but they're around. But I was going to do Rudy Ray Moore, so I interviewed him again. I don't know if he was putting me on or not, but he seemed to remember exactly who I was before I even said my name. That was weird and creepy. He's like, "Oh yeah, man. Hey, how you doing? I talked to you a year ago." I'm like, "I'm Henry." He's like, "Yeah, I know who you are." I'm like, "Okay, cool. You got high mnemonic skills there, Dolomite." But
yeah, by all accounts, a very nice man.
Yeah, he was, and what I was going to do in the article for is I was going to approach them from a sociological angle, because around that time, Henry Louis Gates had written an essay about Black American folklore. See, I mean, Rudy Ray Moore is, by his own admission, he didn't use this term, so I don't mean to be cruel, but he was a plagiarist. And I mean, basically, he took these African American folk heroes, Dolomite and the Signifying Monkey, and all these characters he does around. So they're not original to him. They've been around in the ghetto for years. He himself told me, he said, I was working at a record store about 1969, and I was thinking about trying to do comedy, and there was these guys on the corner outside, and we always called them dime nickel liquor store wise men, because they were out on the corner, drinking liquor, and they were beckoning for dimes and nickels, and they were talking the old stories, and they were dispensing wisdom. And and he said, that's where I heard of Dolomite. That's where I heard of the Signifying Monkey. And he said, when I finally got somewhere as a comedian, I was like, hey, I had him in my act, and I switched around a bunch of stuff, added some material, which is true. He made them, he turned them from like hard R stories to triple X stories. And he was huge as a blue comedian, I mean, I believe Red Fox gave him props at one point, and because Red Fox was one of the first black comedians.
Nobody was bluer than Red.
No, he was. No. Yeah, when I finally started listening to his stuff on YouTube a couple of years ago, because I liked him from Sanford and Son, but Rudy Ray Moore is who got me interested in hearing his comedy stand-up, and I was like, oh my God, man. And
slamming handed the car door, you're gonna say shit and motherfucker.
That's the truth.
It's a Red Foxism.
As you get older, it's more and more true. Yeah, and so that's kind of my Rudy Ray Moore story, to piggyback off what you're saying. But so I'm only saying I knew the man because he remembered who I was. If he didn't remember who I was, I would not claim to have known him. I'll just say, I talked to him on the phone. But I never met him in person. Always planned to. He died young, but what's funny is he had always, like many people in show business, had always lied about his age or purposely obfuscated it. So he was quite a few years older than I would have ever thought he was. Yeah. So when I saw the Eddie Murphy biopic, Eddie Murphy, when he made that, was my age now. Playing Dolomite in the 70s. So he's starting out playing a guy younger than him. Then he does the arc of the story, and he's playing a guy much older than him, but he still looks the same through the entire movie, Eddie Murphy.
Yeah.
So, and they don't make any effort to make him look like Rudy Ray Moore other than the clothing.
I mean, Rudy Ray Moore was 81 when he died.
Yes.
It just feels like it just feels like he died young. Because the interviews he had, even older, he had a lot of energy. He was still,
But people were not like Gen X. We weren't really hip to Rudy Ray Moore until like late 80s at the earliest, and unless we grew up. I mean, but every black person I know in North Carolina that I've ever met has told me that, hell yeah, I listened to that back in the 70s. I got all those records. How come what do you mean? I don't, they can't believe that we hadn't heard of him until like renting videos and stuff.
But you see, I didn't hang out at Blockbuster. I hung out at the mob-owned video stores that littered Denver, and the stuff wasn't well organized, but there was a lot of things you probably wouldn't get anywhere else.